Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. Andy Hibbert is CEO and founder of Karshare, the UK's first car sharing platform. Karshare is building a community that will enable the world to do more with less, with Andy and his team obsessed with delivering brilliant, people-led experiences enabled by the finest technology. So after a hugely successful career in the travel industry with the likes of BA, STA Travel, EasyJet and Reed Mackay, what inspired Andy to dive headlong into the roller coaster of entrepreneurship? Without further ado, let's get into it. Andy Hibbert, welcome to the Extrology podcast. Great to have you as our guest today. Really appreciate your time. And as is customary with all things Extrology, whilst certainly we like to go into some length as to where you find yourself today, we also like to start with the early days and a bit of background to give listeners a bit of context. So if you reflect back on the early days, if you like, for Andy Hibbert, whereabouts did you grow up and what therefore was childhood like for you?
Crikey, that's a deep-rooted question. Well, listen, Lee, thank you firstly for having me here. Yeah, really delighted to have the session with you. So, yeah, early days. I guess I was born in Southport and have forever labelled myself as a Scouse, even though Southport is not too Liverpudlian, but it is in my book. So I guess I was brought up in Formby until I was 7 and then moved down south to Hampshire at that age. So the Scouse was taken out of me kind of in I suppose in some forms, but never in spirit. And I grew up, I suppose, in a village, Droxford in Hampshire, I suppose until I was 18 and then went off around the world and went to university. But even in the village days, I guess I was lucky enough in a village, there were small communities, but I kind of inherited and started like a car washing round at the age of 10 back in the day. So I think I always had a bit of hustle in me about trying to earn money and do things differently. And in those days, it was washing cars. And it's funny how I find myself right now working with cars. But yeah, so that's kind of where I grew up. I went on to university, studied for an aeronautical engineering degree, which was kind of long and hard. And I wanted to become an aerodynamicist for a Formula One team. That was why I did that degree. But then I realized I wasn't dreaming about Bernoulli and his equations as much as others in the world might have been. So that was probably a bit too far-fetched for me. But I did love businesses. And I think at university, I tried a lot of things. I tried to manage a band. I imported snakeboards, tried to help a snowboard company, and probably tried to run a little bit before I could walk. But ultimately came out of university and then went back into where my degree sort of helped me get to with planes. So I worked for a time with British Airways. I worked then for several years with STA Travel, student travel. Went on to then put kind of travel and airlines and online together and worked for EasyJet. So, was doing some great things with EasyJet back in the day when ancillaries were a big thing for airlines. They still are, but anything that's not a seat you sell because that's where a lot of money is made. And I think everyone has seen that now. To get on a plane, you've even got to pay to put a bag in the hold and board the plane. But then I suppose before I am doing what I'm doing now, I went to a wonderful business called Reed Mackay, which is corporate travel, and that was really flying high performance professionals all over the world, lawyers, insurance brokers, finance brokers for 9 years to kind of led that business through a large stage of growth. Wonderfully successful business and always will be. But I guess that's where this idea came to roost. That's where I am now with Karshare. So that's kind of the evolution from birth to now in a short, hopefully, space of time.
If you go back to those days in Droxford and the car route, washing cars, had you even that early? You described that early experience around kind of entrepreneurship and managing a band, doing all sorts of things. Where had that stemmed from? Was there a sort of influential figure who kind of instilled in you that sense of entrepreneurship?
Do you know what? It's interesting because both my parents are academics. So they weren't like a business oriented, very successful academics, doing various things. I just think I had a glint in my eye about trying to make things work. So make things work. Entrepreneurs about making a business, about making money. But even in the day, I suppose when, I started these car washing rounds when I was 11. By the time I was 13, I bought a really nice separate stereo system. It was impressive and it was kind of like the rewards for the efforts. And it was special to me. And it was, I was very young at the time, had a wonderful sound system. But then my dad kindly gave me a really old car, which was a Beetle, 1973 K-Reg Beetle that didn't work. And it was, again, how can I make this work? So I spent 2.5 years trying to take it apart at that age and put it back together again, get some help from people. And to me, it was about finding opportunities where you could make things and do things. And I suppose that's when I thought, actually, if you put your mind to it, you can do a lot of things. And there was a lot of opportunities to make things work, make things happen, make things go. I think it was self-seeded, but I was given the kind of latitude, and particularly in a village, I was not allowed to run feral, but I was allowed to do a lot of things because they were there. So I think I was given the freedom to try, freedom to do. My parents certainly enabled me to go out and do these things and encouraged me to do these things, even at an early age. It was just killing time in a village. I guess I had lots of time, cut off probably from where you are in a city where there's lots of distractions, lots of mates around. In a village at that age, you don't have much transportation to get from A to B from a village. And so I guess I filled my time doing things like that. And actually it was exciting because I owned it. I did it. I delivered it. So that it was probably self-seeded, but given my environment, it allowed me to, I had so much time, it allowed me to get in and do these things.
And what about engineering? Where did that, that love for cars, that desire to get underneath the hood of a K-Reg Beetle and fix it, had you always had a sort of practical, taking things apart, pulling things together type of mentality and experience as a kid?
I think I genuinely just like to do that. I suppose I set myself challenges, and actually, why a Beetle? I think a Beetle was a classic car back in the days of Herbie, and I just loved Volkswagen Beetles. I love the story of the Beetle. I love what it represented. It was based on a Porsche. There was a lot of great things around a Beetle, and in those days, Beetles were quite simple. They were a flat 4 engine, so they weren't terribly like today's engines and motors are horrendously complex and all electronic. But in those days, it was a good way to get into it, and there was something quite cool and cultish about a Beetle. And I thought, if I can get this to work, and I can get it to go, and I can then drive that car, I can have a car, and I can feel quite proud about the fact I fixed it. So I think I just set myself to, I can. And I think I'm a very logical person. So I guess where that led me to in logic, I guess numbers, right and wrong, black and white, engine starts, it doesn't start, cars work, they don't work. That sort of practicality has always been part of my DNA.
Did you pick up? I guess today somebody we jump onto YouTube and watch a video of these sorts of things. But back in the day, I would imagine perhaps something like a Haynes manual or something of that. Did you literally pull a manual off a shelf or out the library and then off you go?
So I had 2 Haynes manuals. One, there was an older car type from 1958 to 1973. I remember it now, 1974 to 19 whatever. So I had 2 Haynes manuals. There was magazines. Volksworld was a famous magazine for doing cool stuff to Beetles, and Volkswagen VW Motoring was the other. So I've still got them today, actually. So I built myself a library of how-tos. And they were like, whether you wanted to look smarter, to do different things, to do clever things, or just to get it going. How'd you take a gearbox out? How'd you take an engine out? And actually, we were talking with people here today. Taking an engine out of a car is no easy thing. You crank it up, and a Volkswagen, you had to drop it out of the bottom. But I can remember the very first time I managed to do that myself by putting the car up on blocks and bringing the engine out and dropping it down slowly on, and then taking it out and then changing the flywheel, changing the clutch. Just because you could do those things and putting it back together again, actually turning the engine and think, crikey, it's working. I quite like that. So I was quite enthused by the fact that you could do these things and experiment. And actually, to be honest, in the early days, I was only driving up and down a driveway. I was going 30 meters. It's not like I was driving on a road at that age. I couldn't, obviously, but being able to sort of do that little thing, in a cul-de-sac where there's, you back in the day, I suppose you could do those things. There was no big bother about. And the neighbours used to laugh at me. Oh, there goes Andy up and down the cul-de-sac again in his car, and reversing forward, backwards. I mean, getting to third gear was an exciting thing when you're 14, just because you got that much time to do it. But I just used to love it, the freedom of doing those things and the ability to sort of practice, try. If it didn't work, try again.
It's quite an interesting. What do you think you gained from that experience?
Understanding about, I suppose, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I mean, a problem is a problem, but until you find the solution. So that type of approach about, understanding there are fixes here. I just don't know how to do it yet, and I've got to learn how to do it. So that kind of tenacity, determination, there is a way, I've got to find a way. And at the end of it, of course, when you do that, the kind of the reward that is visible, that okay, the pride you have in completing a task, in successfully doing it, as simple as getting an engine started or a car. I mean, it was a dead car that we got going, and then we managed to sort of make it into a car that became my car when I was 17, if you like. So just a satisfaction, completing, finishing, idea, concept, okay, get it going. Simple as that, really. Even I suppose for car washing, it was more immediate. I started car washing, and in those days I was getting 50p a car. I then upgraded to start to polish cars, got £1.50 for that and a polish. I then thought, so how can I make more money out of the same object by adding more to it? So I suppose you call that diversifying your services. But I guess you understood what people wanted. They like clean cars. Okay, I'll do the inside as well. Start hoovering cars inside. So it became a valet then. So that full kind of works as a £5. And I suppose that was still back in 1983, 84. So it's quite a lot of money for a kid. And then mowing lawns, all that stuff. How could I do more for this household where I can actually sort of spend more time in one place and get rewarded for it rather than spending time dotting around everywhere? So I guess it's a bit of fun, really. You're evolving. You're kind of, you're just doing things that kind of make things better effectively, but you're evolving all the time. And that was more satisfying, just seeing the money kind of come in at the end of each weekend. I had a little money box. I can remember having all my money in a money box, putting it in a bank. My next door neighbour was a bank account manager. He was quite inspirational because he allowed me to set up an account really early when I was really young, when I don't think you were supposed to have bank accounts. But he set my account up, and he wrote, I've still got the letter he wrote about, every weekend I could see Andy coming down the drive with a wheelbarrow full of money. So it was just, I think the community got behind this little kid that was quite enterprising, fixing things, doing stuff, helping the village by washing cars, mowing lawns. But I think that was it. You were encouraged, you were enthused by people, actually. They blew wind into your sails because they made it aware that they were observing you, but they liked it. They thought it was fun, but they also thought it was very enterprising. So I think there was a lot of encouragement from other people, which, in this day and age, everyone's moving so fast. It's hard to sort of blink and to wonder who's actually seeing what I'm doing and is giving me that encouragement. So I think there was time in the village. You're part of a community, and it was wonderful how they embraced it and I suppose enthused it.
You mentioned Formula One as part of an engineer in Formula One, but as being part of that sort of early ambition or direction of travel. Where had there been a love for the sport as well as the practical engineering kind of implications of what you were doing with the Beetle?
Yeah, so one of my best mates in the village, he was younger than me, was really into Formula One. So this is, again, the same kind of age, 13, 14, 15. So I got into watching it with him. And then latterly, once we had passed our test and we were at the age where we could go to the Grand Prix, we for several years went to watch, Formula One properly. So we went for the whole weekend, Thursday through till Sunday, camped up there. And we were quite, again, apt at getting into places where we probably shouldn't be. So we spent most of the weekend in the paddock. At one point, we had Nelson Piquet's pass to get into the driver area. So we managed to get into the driver areas. And actually, to be honest, so in those days, I suppose at 15, 16, we were following Formula One. So Benetton was a big team. I remember William Towett was the chief designer for Benetton. At one point, I said I was his nephew to get into the paddock. So we used to blag a little bit to get places to meet the team members. But I've got pictures with Senna, Prost, Piquet. We were really amongst it in those days. I think that it's so different and so big, and obviously security is a big deal. Of course it is, but everything was a lot closer those days. It was probably less popular, but we really were amongst it. And we were following it with every innovation, every design, anything that changed, the faster cars, and that was at an early age. So I had a passion for wanting to be part of it from those ages. I think from that stage, and I guess I became good at mathematics. I found that I was quite good at mathematics. I knew that was all about that sort of thing. So I thought, let's try and roll the dice and throw my way into that area of engineering. So let's try and do engineering with a lean on aerodynamics, which is all about flow of cars. And I think I oversimplified the design kind of attractiveness. You can imagine a wind tunnel with aerodynamics and wind flows. It looks great but then behind it is just a bunch of numbers and equations. And to me, that was like, well, that sounds quite boring, actually. the great stuff about the visualization was exciting, but the doing was like, that's really hard. So that love kind of, after I went to university and did it as a degree, I suddenly realized that I didn't have the passion to be what I thought I wanted to do. And what was driving inside was still this fire, which was igniting all the time about wanting to start businesses, wanting to do things, wanting to build things, and more commerce than engineering by a mile. And so I just wanted to find a way to try and enrich that and try to start things. But of course, when you've grown up and then you've really got to pay your bills and you've got to make money, it's a bit more complicated. You can't kind of do it under the comfort of your parents' house where it's all extra cash and it's just a bonus. It's not like you're using the cash to pay for your mortgage. So then it's kind of like, how do you make the two things work effectively? So I guess, but that was why I got into it. And that's why I suddenly realized, unless you're dreaming and you're passionate, it's like anything, unless you really enjoy it, you're not going to really love doing it. So why do you want to force yourself to do it effectively? So at the end of my degree, it was a crossroads. It's like, actually, I'm not that person, but I know I've got a real passion for doing things and creating things. Disrupting, I guess, is kind of where it ended up being.
I was intrigued that, and if I read this right, that as part of your degree, you did aeronautical engineering, you studied aeronautical engineering with French, which struck me as a really interesting combination. And perhaps, and not to draw any assumptions on your subsequent career in the travel industry, but had you always this sort of allied with that engineering interest, sort of an interest in we're a similar age, Andy. So growing up in the 80s, I think we had two language choices at school, probably French and German, but that was about as exotic as life really got. But did you have that kind of interest, that kind of wanderlust or interest in other cultures, other places?
Some people used to say, look, Toulouse is a big company based in France. They make big planes. That's quite good. But the real honest answer is my mother was a French and German teacher. And I picked up languages. So I loved French. And at school, I did French GCSE. We were the first year to do GCSEs actually back in the day. But
in which case, we are the same age.
Yeah. So, but I truly loved French. I love the French culture. I love the French people. Of course, I had desires on a French girlfriend back in the day. But I think it was actually everything about. I think they call them francophiles, don't they? I loved everything about France. It was a wonderful country with really lovely customs, lovely food, and just everything about it. And I could speak the language because I think I inherited some of my mother's genes, where she was a language teacher. And I guess I got quite good at French. And I thought, actually, I enjoy French a lot. And actually, through my degree, it would be useful for me to carry that through as part of that degree. And if I'm being honest, to my horror, I got really good at speaking French. But the French part of my degree was called Mécanique Générale, which is French maths. And I thought the English maths was difficult, but the French maths, I just couldn't understand what it was about. It was like, it was one of those things where it was just mathematics, but it was so off the charts in terms of why are we doing this? I still to today don't understand it. So yeah, that's one of the things. It's like I kind of went down a path thinking, again, I'm just speaking French and I want to learn the language and I love the place and I'm doing French mathematics and actually, why am I doing this?
So what was, you mentioned earlier, you enjoyed a wonderful career in the travel industry. It's a bit simplistic, but for the likes of BA and STA Travel and EasyJet and Reed Mackay, before we come into launching Car and Away and all that's gone since. But in terms of what was the appeal of the travel industry from your perspective as you reflect back?
Well, British Airways was at the end of my university. What do I do from here? And I got a job at British Airways as an aircraft trader. So that was like, it wasn't a graduate scheme. It was a role that existed. It didn't pay a lot of money, but actually, because I understood planes and how they were built and how they worked, I could support a team that were basically leasing and trading and selling planes at British Airways. So it got me into the airline that I thought was, it's an exciting place to be. It came with the perks, good staff travel, and I could go beyond here, but it's a good thing on the CV, right? But then I got really into the airline. I thought, God, this is really intriguing business. How do I get onto the graduate scheme? So then I applied the next year to go on the graduate scheme. I think a lot of people applied and 13 got selected, and I was one of the people who got selected to go on the scheme. So I was pretty proud of that. And in that scheme, you go around the airline over 3 years or 3.5 years into specific areas. So I spent a year and a bit in operations trying to work out how cabin crew and flight crew could be optimized. And it was one of those realizations when you see cabin crew that, are working 650 hours a year, they're contracted to do 900. But because it's bad planning or bad optimization, the airline can't get the rosters to work. The same with the flight crew. So you see all these kind of like cost areas there. The next job I was out in the Caribbean. So I was put out, lovely job in Grand Cayman. I was running the area for a year and a half, and you're basically, there's 3 flights a week, and everyone says that's all you've got to do, but you're everything. If bags go missing, you've got to find bags. If British Airways want the airport expanding, you've got to negotiate how to get the tarmac lengthened by 60 meters and not pay for it. If there's a new product launching, you got to create all the marketing around that and get the island to get behind a new product. And so you become a little business person in your own right in that island. That was interesting. And then I came back and I did a commercial role, which got me into, I guess, trying to incentivize travel agents to sell more British Airways. So I then connected to the wider travel agency. So I got to see a lot of the airline. And I suppose through that process, I saw a lot of problems that a legacy airline had within its makeup, just because of where it had come from. You know, it was a public company, it took private, and within which it had a good branding and status, but the way it worked probably wasn't where it should be. So that was, I guess, the airline side of it. Now, the real reason for me leaving British Airways and going on to other things is because at that point in time, we tried to start an airline. So I'm not quite sure if that's for this story, but I talk about that.
Really. No, but by all means, I'm intrigued.
Well, I'm not quite sure how public I want this to be.
In which case, we can move on. Let's move on.
This is one of those moments.
Leave us hang. One for another episode, a cliffhanger, if you like. Andy's talking about starting an airline.
That was then 6 years of my life trying to start an airline. But that is another. It's probably best kept as a conversation that's not public and recorded and repeated.
No, don't worry. But it's interesting that once again, there's that sense of starting something. You know, that intrigue around businesses and
I suppose what it comes down to. I saw a big opportunity. But anyway, I left British Airways and I went to STA Travel, and I was grateful because it was a role that kind of took me out of a big corporate into a smaller business. You know, from whatever thousands of people to a business that had hundreds of people in a nice team in the UK. They were at a time where the whole world was changing for them. So their closest competitor kind of collapsed. That was UCIT. So STA Travel was then on its own. And then Expedia suddenly launched. So this big online travel player made booking travel a lot easier. And of course, if you're a student, you just go wherever it's easy. So it kind of being attacked on all fronts. So it's interesting trying to help that business launch an online product and also trying to reflect how it was in the marketplace that had just changed. And the airlines were changing their game behind the scenes. So everything was changing. So for 4.5 years, I guess we looked to work hard to reposition that business and to sort of make it more by giving it another channel online. And it was insane when you think that when we launched the online booking engine for that business, and a lot more people than just I were involved, obviously, getting a result, that came back within 20 seconds was a miracle. And you think, would you sit around to wait for a result on a website to give you a flight result? It's like, never. But that was then. And it was like, wow, okay, so that felt quite special. But ultimately, I guess I started looking around and thinking, where do I go from here? And I still, in the background, had other visions of what I wanted to do. But then I goes EasyJet kind of approach. There was a position that was based in Luton that was head of their ancillary. Exciting because, EasyJet was another frenetic business, a lot smaller. I thought, I've been to BA, let's see what it's like on the other side. And of course, EasyJet had started eating BA short haul lunch. And I was keen to see where it was going, what it was doing. And I got in there and it was absolutely frenetic. It was bonkers. I mean, almost over-optimized, where there were new ideas every day. It's like, I've not even done yesterday's idea yet. But nonetheless, the energy and the kind of desire to do new things was taking it like on a really rapid journey. So I was there for 9 months and it was ironic that in those days, and this is the metric that we focused on, is in-flight retail was already generating a third of the airline's profits, or collectively a large amount of the profits. And yet we were only getting £1.32 per head on the plane. And so again, like when we try to do little experiments, how do we get more money out of each passenger? Sell more coffee, sell more tea, sell more duty free. We had the idea of saying, well, look, I think Alan Sugar said it's the sizzle that sells a sausage, which is like you cook a sausage on the road and someone's going to smell it, they're going to want to buy a hot dog. It's like a coffee store selling coffee. There was an oven on the plane that was only for crew meals. And we said, look, can we try an experiment where we get paninis? It will only fit 12 over the course of the flight, but why don't we try and heat paninis and sell hot paninis? Because the smell of the hot paninis are going to sell the paninis. And we utilized the crew oven, and it worked. Literally, we sold all the paninis every flight. So then, of course, that piece of work then was a big retrofit that was beyond my time. But they then, of course, they sell hot food all through the plane now. It's a big piece of their. But you see how that evolved. It was literally, let's just try this because we can. the crew meals are done in the last half an hour. We've got an hour probably every flight just to heat up some puddings and see if we can sell them, put them on the roster. But I love that because in a big airline, even EasyJet was big then, it was just like, how can we try and hustle, innovate things quickly? That's shipping things quickly to try and experiment without the confines of a million people making decisions. And EasyJet was like that. They were actually more able to do things like that because they were full of bright people trying to do things better every day. So I love that role actually, but I suppose the combination of, I was living in Southwest London, it was in Luton. We just had a baby, my wife and I, Sarah. And I remember one journey from Luton back to Southwest London took me 3.5 hours because every bridge was closed and every motorway was jammed and it was just horrendous. I thought that I can't live like this. So at the time when a job opportunity came up at Reed Mackay, which was a private equity backed, they just bought into a wonderful family owned business. And they wanted me to come in there and probably help to become the successor to the founder's son, to take it on and sort of help to drive the business forward and relinquish the current sort of family member in charge so he could exit and do less of work there. And that was right in the centre of London. I thought that's much better. And I guess it was a good opportunity to learn about how a business can grow that has a really solid foundation, but great ambitions, but needs more structure in it to grow, has investment behind it. And I guess that's why I landed for 9 years and learned an awful lot. I mean, all these processes that I'm talking about, actually, there's a lot of learnings going on there.
Absolutely. So
coming into a family-run business that's just been taken on by a private equity house changes the gearing of that business quite significantly behind the scenes, because it now needs to grow for a reason. Not because it can and because it's good and it's solid and people love it and customers love it. It will grow organically. It's because it's been invested in and they want it to grow faster than just organically. And actually with a bit more structure, it probably can. So it kind of taking that business and leading that business with some wonderful people on a growth rate probably of 20% a year, that then it was sold twice through that process. It just taught me a lot of things about kind of the stresses and strains of fast growth rate businesses that have a really deep-rooted, strong culture, and that culture kind of gets strained somewhat as you grow. And it's strained because you get bigger. You haven't got as much love for all the family, so you can't be the same person to 400 people as you could do to 100 people. But also the kind of opportunities to say, if you have got a successful business and you're careful about looking after things through that journey, you can grow successfully. But you have to accept that changes are there. But yeah, so that was a really exciting journey at Reed Mackay. But that's where I guess the idea really happened for what was Car and Away and now is Karshare.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did the idea stem from?
So Reed Mackay was so successful at what they called high touch travel. So it was kind of, rather than just being a booking agent and booking what you asked for, we worked really hard to find the best solution that saved you money, saved you time and kept you moving. And it was proactive and preemptive. So if you're a business traveler going to America, what's really important to you is what seat you sit on, because you need to work in privacy and you don't want to be near noise. Getting seamlessly from the airport to my hotel and people, I know who to look for, they know who to look for me. I'm not waving around an airport wondering where my board is. And then being in a hotel that's close to my meetings, where it needs to be, and everything happens like clockwork. And they did it very successfully. And if it went wrong and the flight was cancelled or weather system moved up the East Coast and the airport shut, the traveller would never know there was a problem. We'd have moved them to a different airport and got their transport orientated to get them home. So we looked after everything. And they love that, because that meant that, if you get to a ticket desk and you go and say, look, where's my flight? And they tell you it's cancelled. All the other passengers would then run to the other plane that's operating. So if a Virgin flight cancelled, for example, and BA was operating, there's about 20 seats left. 350 people are scrabbling to the ticket desk to get on that plane. We'd say to our travellers, we've already got you sorted on that plane, don't worry. You've been booked on it for the last 6 hours, and this is your seat because it's close to what your preferred seat is. So we had so much preemptive capability. So what happened was, where these people were flying in business class flatbeds, staying in 5-star hotels, getting chauffeurs to and from airports, and we managed all the things around it, all of a sudden they started asking for Airbnb. And I was so intrigued about, it wasn't just 1 out of 1,000, it became like 2%, 5%, and like, what is this Airbnb? This is 2014. So right. That's where we are right now. And in those days, unbeknown to most of us in the UK, Airbnb had grown out of this philosophy, as you know, by sharing a house or a flat or a room within either of those things to somebody else. I knew either there or you rent the whole place out. And by that time in 2014, that we didn't know this, but we researched it, Airbnb was bigger than the Hilton globally already. So the Hilton Hotel Group, all the room nights they sell, Airbnb was then bigger than the Hilton group globally. So it was becoming quite prevalent for people and they were latching onto it. So I jumped on a plane and I was intrigued enough to go and see some travel agencies in America to say, look, what is this thing? So I booked a flight. I rented a car at LA, and I had 5 agencies to go and drive to just to talk to them about business travel agencies like ours, but in America. So friends of ours that we could rely on to correspond and to collaborate and so on. Anyway, turned up at the airport, got off the flight. I went to pick up the car, big queue. I waited for about an hour and 20 minutes to get to the front of my queue, just to be told that my car wasn't ready. It will be some time yet, but I could take a bigger car, but there's $200 extra for that. And I was like, well, how long do I have to wait? Well, it could be 2 hours, so we're not sure. I was like, what? So I'm a bit peeved, having waited this much time to find I haven't got my car and I'm spending $200 for a bigger car I don't need. Anyway, took it because I had to get on. I'm already late. So I took the car like most people do in those situations. They just forced into a corner and they've got people breathing down. You've got another 16 people behind you just looking over your shoulder saying, get on with it. And you think, oh, all right. So you kind of forced through. Went around to have these meetings and was overwhelmed by the penetration of Airbnb in the business travel sector, but also picked up that it was so popular in the leisure sector. And it was really because what I understood from it was it wasn't just it was new. It's because some people who travel on business all over the world and do it frequently, like 60 times a year, they actually get quite lonely, and they feel a bit awkward when they spend the night in a hotel. They go down to dinner in a hotel restaurant and it's nicely dimly lit and the piano's playing, but all they're having is a 3-course meal sitting on their own. And they feel a bit of a lemon. And people actually chose that they now had the option to say, look, I can go and get a house downtown in Manhattan or a flat. I can do my business meetings in Manhattan. I can go stay here and I can order a pizza from Papa Joe's and I can just be like home from home. I can relax, put my feet up on the sofa, watch some telly. And it's not such a structured kind of 5-star experience because I don't want that sometimes. And it just gave them choice and people were opting and choosing to do something different. So it was becoming important that you could offer that as a product set. So I got to the airport and again, I handed my rental car back. Next problem, there's a scratch on the bumper. That's another $100 or so. I was like, I didn't scratch that. And they said, well, it wasn't there when you took it. And I said, well, how do you know? And they've got photographic evidence. I haven't got any evidence to prove it wasn't me. And I haven't got time to muck about. So another $100 down. And this is now insane. I don't know, how this experience could have got any worse. But I'm cross. I didn't get the car. I wasn't compensated for that. I had to pay more money for it. And now there's a little scratch on the bumper, which you could polish out if you really cared for it. But I was charged extra for that. And to learn also further to that is that many of these companies, or some of these travel car rental companies, they incentivize staff to find those scratches. So there's a definite kind of like, I suppose maybe that's not for air, but it got under my skin. So anyway, I'm at the airport and I'm contemplating these two phenomena. Airbnb, incredible sharing business that's grown massively, bigger than the Hilton, just by sharing a single room or a flower house of somebody, but there's hundreds and thousands of them. And car rental, and like how this service has never innovated in the last 40 years. It's still full of queues, extra charges, never getting what I want. This car is similar, never getting even a similar car. And I was really kind of like, this can't be the case. And as I was having these two thoughts colliding, one that's a rubbish service of car rental and the other which is a innovative new opportunity to stay in a property that was someone else's, I looked out the window and just saw this sea of parked cars. Must have been 10,000 parked cars sat at the airport. And I just went, wow, crikey. Why can't we share these cars here right now, just like people are sharing their homes? Because their homes are empty, their houses are empty, their flats or a spare room is empty. These cars are totally empty. They're not doing anything. And yet I can give this particular Toyota Camry, this exact car to Lee. So forget this car or similar. There's 10,000 cars here that could be rented by Lee if I can enable them to share them. I just got so excited. I literally thought, God, how many cars are parked around the world right now at airports? It must be millions. Millions. Yeah. Probably 10 times the amount of cars across the car rental industry. And they're already here. They're already here doing nothing. Why can't we put them to better use? So I literally, on the plane back, I kind of wrote a mini business plan about how could this work? What could we do? And then I researched it further, and that's when I really found out, Lee, that I guess the biggest opportunity was when you realise that cars aren't just parked at airports gathering dust. They're parked most of their life, sat on our streets and driveways outside our houses 96% of the time. And you think, this is insane now. In those days, there was 1 billion cars on the planet, and hardly none of them are being used. And yet we're literally wallpapering our planet with unused cars. Well, there must be a better way. And if Airbnb are doing it and changing mindsets around house ownership and access, there must be a business that would work for everybody around giving people the ability to access other people's cars in the same way.
So the average car owner only uses their car 4% of the time, is that right?
Yeah. And it's an average, okay? So if it means you're popping to the school run for 20 minutes a day, that's your 4%. And it kind of disrupts the ability to rent it. But many cars aren't used at all during the week and just at weekends. Some cars are used more at the week and never at weekends. And some cars just aren't used much at all. They're bought as an idea concept, and they, work changes. I start commuting using the tube or bus, or I bike or I cycle, whatever. And you think, there are these cars that are literally sat around doing nothing, but they're costing owners a lot of money a year just to own and have the privilege of having them parked outside the house. And there's got to be a smarter way that we could utilize this together. And bearing in mind where Airbnb had come from and where it was going, we thought, God, this has got to be a big opportunity. So I guess I had to manage a position where Reed and Mackay, was obviously a great company and had done great things, but we had to organize that I exited effectively. So that was done with the business. And then after a transition period, I was then allowed to think about this permanently. So I guess in February 2016, I then set up, or January 2016, I set up Car and Away Limited, which was just the trading name. It was just the name of the business, Car and Away, Far and Away, just an idea that came up in a previous conversation. But we went right back to the roots, saying building a marketplace where owners could give their cars out to renters nearby is really complicated, because I've got to build two sides of the marketplace. But if I go back to where the idea dropped in my head at an airport, that market already exists, doesn't it? Because at airports, there are millions of cars parked up every year because people fly away on holiday for 1, 2, 3 weeks. And there are millions of people flying into airports getting the service that I experienced to rent a car.
Yeah.
Queues, charges, not getting the car I want, and the rest. I said, if I can convince an airport that we can create a new exciting parking product, it's a new category, park and share your car and make money and actually, in fact, your parking could be free. You can make a profit because your car is being rented out. And what's more is, how could that help airports? Well, airports in the summer, at Easter, at Christmas, their car parks are generally full. Pre-COVID, they're all at capacity. If I can, the business can rent cars out to people, there's a big opportunity that space becomes free again. So as an airport, I get capacity and I can resell that space because the car no longer exists in it. It's been rented out for 10 days. I know it's gone for 10 days. I've got 10 more days of space. So we could start to build a really smart capacity solution for airports around parking, where they no longer had to build more car parks. And that was really kind of ingenious. And Gatwick, as an airport of choice that we went to and talked about this, said, I see how that could be a really successful operation. We'd like to back that idea. We'd like to work with you to make it possible. How are you going to rent the cars? So then, of course, we actually the same with a rental aggregator, rentalcars.com, we knew from, I guess, travel industry days. And we said to them, look, here's an idea. We'd like to get these cars and make them as inventory that can be instantly booked on your platform as an alternative to all the others you have. We think it's a good alternative because it does these things. You can book the car and get the exact car, walk up to it, and you can drive away in 10 minutes. We don't have extras. We don't have counters, no queues, nothing. How about it? And they were also intrigued about it. And they understood where perhaps car sharing was going and would like to sort of see how we could do this together. So they agreed to aggregate, and if we could provide them content in a certain way through an API, they would sell it through their rentalcars.com website, which is phenomenal, really. The backing we had at that early stage was really, I suppose, powerful as an endorsement to the idea actually starting to generate more than just an idea. It's beginning to happen. So that encourages even further. Say, look, we've got this now. We now have to find an insurance partner that will allow us to do this, bearing in mind we don't own the cars. We don't know who's going to be renting them, but we want to insure every single car fully comprehensively. How can that be possible? And we spent a year and a half talking to insurance companies about how to make it possible. And we always believed that being more transparent about how the cars are being driven would enable us to be better equipped to deal and work with insurance companies. So that's like having we call it telematics, like a Fitbit. So it then took us a year to get a company to give us the ability to work a telematics proposition into a rental-based business. And the reason I'm saying that is that most telematics driver behavior monitoring is around young drivers, and they aggregate the content every week, every Sunday. Bang, 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 score it up to date. How many miles you've driven? Are you in the confines of the criteria? But we had to try and repurpose the telematics to say we want it done on a trip that could be for a day, a week, 2 weeks, and we want to do it every day so we get an aggregate score so we can update people as to where they are. And we managed to convince an Italian company called Octo, another great company, who wanted to develop a way to get to a bigger market through telematics. Young drivers is a saturated market. A lot of people competing to do that insurance market. But beyond there is 99.9% of the mass market that no one's touching. And we were a route into it, first route into it. So that they agreed to work with us and refactor their platform to enable it to slice the data differently, to allow us to do rental based on trips and days. And with that, back to the insurance company, they said, right, we'll do this. So it's one of those situations where you're working with each partner to understand how it could work and what they needed to make it work. Airports were satisfied about the genuine opportunities to create sustainable options for customers and help a capacity situation. Rental cars like the idea of an alternative. We're not saying we're better. We could say that, of course, but we just know we're different, and there are options that allow customers to get a different choice. And we felt it was a better choice, but that's what we would say. And then the insurance and the telematics, and then the RAC came on board, and then we had this ecosystem. We said we can actually do this now. So then it came back to, right, we need to raise some money because everything is in place, but actually we can't really self-fund this. We need some proper capital. But when you have all those elements together in a bag, and you go to a group of people who have capital, who see the genuine route to a marketplace backed with some, I suppose, substantial partners, it's a really lovely conversation because you're going beyond an idea. And I guess that whole system about endorsements and belief, that's the oxygen that I think startup companies need to propel them into the next conversation. And when you're backed with some serious partners like that around an idea that actually looks like more than an idea, it's a really big platform for us to then raise money. So that's how we got our first seed capital and did our first round, because we managed to organize ourselves in such a way that we had built an ecosystem that was prepared to do it with us.
Was there a pivotal moment where you think that had been instrumental to your success?
The pivotal moment was getting the insurance product. And I can remember, because don't forget that took a year and a half. And of course, without it, you can't operate. And dealing with Octo Telematics, which was an Italian business, it just showed us as a business, again, about this whole persistence. A problem is only a problem because we haven't yet found the solution. How can we get an insurance back to back us? Well, they want these things. Well, how do we fix that problem then? So it's just that continual, let's understand what problem we're trying to unlock. And I can remember walking sometimes at the end of every week thinking, we haven't got there yet. And this is really hard. It's taxing, it's tiring. And, when you have such an ambition to want to solve a problem, but yet you can't find the solution. Once we cracked that insurance using a telematics approach, which was genuinely sincere, that we wanted to put back to Reed Mackay, don't forget, preemptive, proactive management of problems. We wanted to be preemptive and proactive about management of driver behavior. So if we spotted someone was driving the car in a way that we wouldn't want them to be driving, so speed, accelerating, cornering, so accelerating fast, braking quickly, we could see all that stuff, which meant that we could then correspond with that person via a text message to change behavior. And we proved in that point, actually, when we launched, that 89% of the time, we were able to change behavior. The scores got better. That, to me, was one of the most pivotal points, because it was the most difficult egg to crack. And we were a concept with some really smart people, with some really amazing partners that came together to say, all right, we're going to back you here. We like what you do. We trust what you're doing. And actually, what you've put together is a really smart way to get into this market, but also probably overcome some of the challenges that we have around insurance, which is when we insure a car, we like to know where the car is, who owns the car, and what the car is. And what you're asking us to do is, it could be any car with anybody going anywhere. I said, but if you give us eyes on that car and you can monitor how that car is being driven, and you can then intervene, you've gone a lot further than most others have ever done in working with us to build an insurance product.
What is it that you hope to achieve with Karshare?
Well, it goes back to the whole premise that there is, I suppose, a massive pressure everywhere right now on space. And you think about, I suppose, the opportunities to create like an Airbnb of cars, which is a business where people can share their cars. But realistically, you're trying to take a lot of unused cars off the planet. We are producing cars at a rate of notch, which takes a lot of CO2, which is kind of not good for the planet, that we put on our streets that sit there unused, which is not good for urbanization and space. So if you can imagine taking half the cars off the streets in the UK, in France, in anywhere, and repurposing that land for something better, runways, tramways, walkways, even playing Kirby. When I was a kid, I could play Kirby because there was a curb I could see. I can't do that anymore. But using that space better, and the cars that are left, for people to genuinely share those cars, to do things, to see people, to go places. So there has to be some people that own them and some people that access them. But imagine if we'd be so much better off because we'd have more space and less cars. And with less cars, congestion would be much less because people aren't driving around trying to find spaces. I mean, in some cities, congestion, 25% of which is created because people spend 25 minutes trying to find a parking space. It's ridiculous. And we're a growing population, more people moving to cities. There isn't any more space for any more cars. Yet, unless we do something, we're just going to grind to a halt, aren't we?
Yeah, and we've got issues around public transport infrastructure, the investment that's required to support that. These are all huge structural issues that governments the world over are desperately trying to find ways to solve.
Yeah, so I think we're part of the solution. We're not the only solution. I mean, there's lots of things that have to change, but enabling people to share and to build trust in communities that can access cars or can share their cars is such a big thing. And what's more, I think, is that in doing that, you enrich the community. The money goes back into the pockets of the people who own the car. So there's nothing wrong with companies existing and making money as a company. But, this day and age, particularly, the cost of living crisis, the net zero kind of challenge we have as a planet or as a country, or as a city within that country. All those things combined. So this is just such a neat idea because I can put money in the pockets of people that need it. And by doing that, we can reduce the burden of ownership for other people. And we can help to unclog the streets, and through which we can stop the production of some of the cars, which then stops emitting and wasting so much CO2. So that whole thing, I know it's a bit kind of holistic, but you've got to start somewhere. And we really are passionate about delivering kind of a more sustainable, enriching option for people where, they can generate some cash and they can solve problems for others who can't afford a car. They can access a car now and without, having to worry about owning it. In fact, they can access hundreds of different cars. So I suppose there are so many things that we think we can do positively for communities and I suppose for the planet, from top to bottom. That's what's really driving us. And it's just that kind of, we have to tip that balance about getting people to see the car differently.
What is it that drives you, Andy?
I think the big driver is seeing, firstly, identifying a problem that we know we can fix. So there's a challenge here, which is there's a lot of unused cars here, but we could do something much smarter with them. So it's back to that. There's a big opportunity here to really make a big difference here. But also, the challenge of trying to influence people to think differently and change their behavior, working, with a really smart team. So, as we're here, in Izmir right now with the technical team, this isn't one person trying to change it. This is a lot of people trying to change it, through creating great tools to changing people's belief and gaining trust for people to start this movement going and gaining traction, getting quicker. So that, of course, was the kind of burning desire. When you start to get traction, you start to realize that you are doing those things. There are people who are joining and it actually it's increasing, it's getting faster. And there are people who love the product. Then you realize you're doing something that adds a lot of value. getting the feedback from users, from customers, seeing growth of 20-25% month on month is a really incredible kind of like, companies. I suppose young companies grow faster off a small base, but month on month it's consistently growing that level. It's that feedback that you're thinking you are doing something right here. People are liking what you're selling. They're adopting what you're suggesting is a smart idea, and they're becoming involved. They're pioneering with you. So seeing that community grow, I think we've almost got 20,000 users right now. This time last year we had about 2. So it's just incredible that more people are joining in, and that's a massive inspiration that you're doing something now that is being, I suppose, driven by the community, not just by the idea. That in itself is more oxygen to say, look, this is working here. How can we make it work more? Where else can we take it? What can we do? How do we get more people to be aware of it? Because it's always the same thing. The more awareness, the more people can see and benefit. But you have to realize that in every business, there's always the people, early adopters, and then there's the kind of that whole stage, isn't there, about those people, the innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards, I think they're called. That we've got to go through each of those stages, but it catches. It's like, when does the next stage catch? And it's like saying, it's exciting, when you start to see volumes growing and people using the service and it working. Doing what we do with keyless technology is not easy. When we first did it, half the rentals just didn't work. Can't get in the car, doesn't start, doesn't stop. Not the car doesn't start, but the applications don't work. The connections to the car doesn't work. And this day, we've got a hugely high degree of success because it has to work. But that whole journey of going from trying it and delivering it and it's not quite working as well as it is, then realizing it doesn't work on every phone, it doesn't work on every Bluetooth variant, it doesn't work on every car. So let's knock all that stuff out that we know. So anyone with that phone in the future, they shouldn't download the app and just tell them your phone's not compatible. All these phones are above this level. So guide them, don't just tell them they can't. But that's just learning, isn't it? So you're learning so much to try and make things better. But that's the knowledge you're building means that every day your product becomes easier and better for everybody. And I think it's amazing. We're still at the start of a journey. We're a UK-based company, a great team of people from all over the world. Basically, from Bulgaria or Turkey, you're English. We've got testers in Sri Lanka. It is a great team coming together to deliver a product that they are all inspired now because it's getting this traction and more people are joining and making it work. And, I think we recognize that we can go so much further with the product and make it possible for more people to engage and benefit from it. And that's the driving force for us now. It's like, this isn't just a product market fit test now. This actually does work. It really does work. And I think for everybody here, I think, well, okay, we are 5 times bigger right now than we were last year. And we want to be sort of 5 or 6 times bigger in a year's time. You're getting some serious traction in the business then.
What does success mean to you?
Actually, it's a good question. We want to build a product that people love. And we want to build a product that many people can use and access. And we want to build a product that doesn't just work in the UK. That works, pan-European and probably beyond there. So success to us means that we've done that, really, because we believe it can do a lot of great things. And again, a product that can help someone in a village, help people in a town, help communities and cities, help a country, and help a continent. You don't get many opportunities where products can do that at that level. So we think this product's got a long way to go. We want to create as much. We want to do as much as we can in the time we have to make it available to more people. So I think UK, pan-European, and beyond. And that, I suppose there's a lot to do to get us that far. But we believe that doing what we're doing in the UK and building out this marketplace in 2 or 3 years, we can do those things across into Europe.
Who do you admire?
Who's a big inspiration for me? So it's interesting. The biggest sources of inspiration for me have been people who have come from humble beginnings through large persistences, determinations, and have created success in their own right or for other people. So I suppose back in the day for me, Ayrton Senna was a big inspiration. I know he sadly died. If you look at kind of where he began in Brazil and how he worked and how he had to get what his family had to give up to enable him to do the things he do. But how he was a very outspoken person, even when he was successful, for the betterment of his industry. Safety was a big deal. I mean, it's so sad that he died the way he died when he was the pioneer of safety in Formula One. And he was so vociferous about that sort of stuff. But he had to endure so many hardships to get that far and beyond. So that's a big inspiration to me about, never give up and keep trying to make it better. That, I suppose, I'm trying to think of other people actually off the top of my head who is, so that I suppose if I look at it into efforts, there's people like that I know of that have inspired me. My grandfather inspired me massively. So my dad's dad. He was a lot of things, a lot of great things. He was a builder, but he also drove a lot of goodwill in the community. So I suppose where he lived in Chorley, so in Lancashire, a very tight community, but he did a lot for that community. So, as everyone gets older, widows die. He'd look after widows because they were friends of his. So he was really, really kind and giving in the community. And I can remember when he passed, how just things happened. We were thanked as grandchildren by people we didn't really know. We were even given checks. So when people he looked after died and inheritance came to their children, they gave us some money because of thanks to our granddad. So that ability to care for a wider sense of the community and do more for people is kind of enriching, because that's the purpose. We're trying to get, I suppose in some respects, Karshare is a product trying to do more for more people, but there's a sense of wanting to deliver back that way. So I think that's been a big inspiration for me. I've always been touched by people's admiration of his kindness and how far that went in the community. And of course, I was young when he passed, so reflecting on it more now, realizing how important that was, now how big of a deal that was. Again, it's just like, there are lots of communities that still do those things, but we've somehow lost touch with some of that. COVID brought a lot of that back. So, that's a big inspiration. So I guess there's two different spectrums there, really. Someone who's worked hard and pioneered and come from humble beginnings to do great things, and then someone who's much closer to me.
So looking back, what advice would you give 21-year-old Andy Hibbert?
The biggest piece of advice I would give myself is, if you're going to do something, just do that and don't try to do other things around it. Because I think I suppose if you have a belief that's strong enough and you have a commitment that's strong enough, you'll find a way. But if you try to do it on the side, as well as other things, it's never going to work. I think that's always been like, the attraction of doing this and making it work is great, but not if you've got another job or you've got a degree to do. So not at the expense of other things. If you're going to do something, really just put yourself into it and do it. And if it doesn't work, it's all part of a lesson anyway. If it works, it's got more chance of working if you put everything behind it than if you put something behind it. And I think I learned that. And I suppose that's where probably Karshare has got so much more success. It's still got a long way to go, but we put everything behind this. We started the right way. We got the right team committed. We kind of got the investment right. We got partners right, because we were really focused on it, and that is it. It's singular. It's a really ruthless kind of focus on that, as opposed to let's try it. It's a sideshow. So I just say, if you're going to start something, think about what you really need to do, get it going, and put it all in. Don't do it half-heartedly.
Importantly, therefore, anyone listening, where can they go to find out more? Where can we find out more about Karshare if we want to get involved? How do we get involved?
Well, Karshare.com, it's Karshare with a K. I always say that because people might go to the wrong place. The website's very open. We're recruiting regularly, but getting in contact with us is really easy. There's phone numbers there, there's emails on site. And if you feel purpose-driven, particularly around sustainability, and you like the idea of growing, within a startup, as a person growing within a startup, because it's frenetic, it's fast-paced, we stand on moving sands, but we're able to stabilize ourselves a lot because we're kind of agile that way. If you like that kind of environment, then massively get in touch. We're always looking for great talent, whether it's around, development, technical engineering, marketing, growth, service, orientation, systems. There's so much really going on, because, finding great talent, as you're going through, growth is exciting. So, I'd encourage anyone to look at it, see if it suits you as a person, character, see if the purpose kind of lights you up. We want to try and encourage more people to do more with less and to waste less and use resources in a smarter way. And you care about the planet, then absolutely, we'd love more people to sort of talk to us and get engaged.
So what does the future look like for you?
Me or Karshare?
Well, for both.
Well, it's interesting. We're doing a retrospective today about kind of how we can work better together as a business. And I was so inspired by the fact that, like all businesses, we don't do things perfectly, but there's a huge amount of talent that knows how we can be better. So I guess, we are a position now where we're trying to be smarter about working better together as a team on the back of seeing this business growing at a rate of knots right now. So the future for us is really exciting. We're going through another investment round this year. We hope to get some bigger investment towards the last part of this year to then help Karshare continue and drive growth across the UK, but taking the team and the community with us. So yeah, we're just kind of really near term, next 2 years, really excited. We've got some coming out of COVID was a tough time, for everybody, not just for Karshare, for everybody. But I think there's now a kind of sense of freedom that we can do things that are unencumbered by that particular problem. And we're just seeing that actually what we're doing is really starting to work. So yeah, we're sitting on a strong foundation now. We know we've got some great traction. We're going through this round, but we're going into it, I think, with a lot of confidence because we can show people how it's working, and it's really working. Exciting times, and it's a fascinating story. And I think that the purpose that you have behind it, behind all that you're trying to achieve with Karshare is of huge value to not only clearly all stakeholders, if you like, not only us as a planet, the human race, the ever evolving disruptive nature of so many businesses and what they're trying to achieve is fascinating. And your story is a fascinating one as to how you arrive with Karshare today. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to share it with us, and indeed wish you and all your colleagues continued success, because I think it's a wonderful proposition, and one that I'm sure awful lot of blood, sweat and tears, though, is going into it, clearly will continue to thrive and go from strength to strength. So really appreciate you taking the time out. Thanks for your insight and candor. It's been great to have you as a guest. Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, it's been lovely to chat with you. Yeah, well, I suppose we reflect back in a year's time, we can do kind of another session to see how we did do. But it's nice to share the stories. I appreciate you actually, doing that with us today. Fantastic. Great stuff. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's Extrology podcast. I really appreciate your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed it, then why not hop onto iTunes and give us a review? I'd really appreciate anything that you might have to say. Any feedback always gratefully received, and look forward to hosting you next time. See you soon. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.